Welcome to Culture Couch Live. We got Chris, Carly, and Jez. How are you, everyone? Everyone well?
Hello, Paul.
Hello,
How's things in
Rizzy.
Hawaii there? It must be sunny and
Well, you guys had a taste of it a couple of weeks ago. How'd you enjoy it?
yeah, it was pretty busy. Must admit, I didn't realize Hawaii was so busy. I couldn't believe how many people get there.
Mate, place to be. That's why. Hey,
Clearly.
hey, we thought we'd have a bit of a conversation around middle management today because we hear it a lot with emerging leaders, and obviously the exec team gets really busy. How do we empower the middle management? But Cully, there's a recent sort of paper that come out about it, and there's some really key points. Do you want to just enlighten the viewers about what they were, and let's have a really good chat about them?
Yeah, absolutely. So Gartner have produced a paper recently. It's called Managers Are Cracking and How Do We Help Them? So out of the pandemic, what we've seen and what this paper talks about is that there's a lot more pressure on middle managers. So obviously we're working remotely. We're not all in the same place, but the middle managers, obviously in the middle, leaders are pushing down on them to do more. People underneath are pushing up on them to get more visibility and more clarity. And we're seeing a lot of signs of failure in that middle management level. So we'll post the paper on the website to let you have a look. But three of the main things they're talking about for middle managers, the first one is around goal conflict. So middle managers are spending 45% more time managing people, but they're still expected to actually do the work. We talk about that in, that player coach syndrome. They're sort of stuck in the middle. So we might have a chat about that. The second one is stress and fatigue. So because they're spending so much more time managing people, they don't necessarily have the skills to manage people and to understand their role as leaders. So 54% of them are suffering from stress and fatigue from the workplace. And that's a really significant amount. And then the third one is talking about lack of confidence. So if we're putting all this trust and empowerment in the middle managers, but they haven't got the skills and they haven't got the time, people are finding it really hard to have confidence in their ability and to trust in the work they're doing. And that's a result of them not having the time or the skills to do the job. So it's sort of a lot of pressure in that middle layer that's coming from above and below. And I think it's just a really interesting kind of concept that leaders need to start thinking about, because if we do have these expectations, we need to give them firstly the skills, but secondly understand their role and help them work through that role so that they can actually fulfill what we need them to fulfill. So Jez, I'll probably pass to you, because I think we talk a lot about emerging leaders and we learn a lot from emerging leaders in sport and how they're valued and developed and taught in a sporting environment. But there's probably some really good learnings that we need to take out of that at the moment to help our middle managers through the corporate world.
Yeah, two things before we begin. I didn't realise you'd taken over as host of.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so Rizzy, I don't know how you're feeling, but clearly the middle management in our company stepped up and taken over.
No, you need to reframe that, please.
It's the empowerment model.
So second thing is, I actually don't think these are the emerging leaders, Carly. I actually think this is what in sporting terms we call the core group.
Yeah.
And so these are the people. Well, there's so many different points in there that where do you begin? So I think the first one is people get promoted to leadership positions not because of their leadership capacity. Normally, they get promoted because they're good at their job.
Yeah.
And we talk about that all the time. So you get someone who's really good at their job. Everyone goes, oh, wow, they're great at their job. Let's promote them to the next level. Now, the truth is we may not have invested in them as a leader, because what companies tend to do is we invest really heavily at the executive level and perhaps even the GM level, the level below if they're larger companies. But we don't spend the time and money generally that we should on the middle management that we're talking about here. And these are the people that lead our people. Like it's one of the most bizarre things. Rizzy and I have been in a couple of workshops where we've just gone, but do you train these people? And they're like, well, no, but don't they lead your people? And the answer is yes, they lead our people. So what we have to do as leaders of companies is step back and say, who is leading our people? Have they got the capacity to do it? Not are they good at their job, but have they got the capacity to lead the people that they're leading? Because if you, we do this in workshops often. If you say to the executive team, how many people do you lead? 2,000 people. Well, are you in 2,000 meetings every day? Clearly the answer is no. So, well, who's in those meetings? Who's delivering the outcomes that we need delivered, even though the 7 people sitting here leading 2,000 down here? And generally it's the middle managers that you're talking about. So the first thing I would say is make sure we invest heavily in developing the leadership capacity of the people that lead our people. And if we can do that, well, then we're in a far better place than if we promote people and then hope, and then we'll pick up some other points as we go through. Sorry, Rizzy.
No, but I think you're right, Jess. And thinking through what you're saying is, in the business world, if you look at it, most people get promoted because they're technically really, really good.
Yep.
And it's interesting when people talk about the great coaches, you know, the Kevin Sheedys, the David Parkins, often it's not the best players that become the best coaches because of the reasons you're talking about. And I just sort of thought about that as you were talking. Yeah, sometimes, some of the better players become, but
Paul Roos.
Well, there's been some pretty good players that have been coaches, let's be perfectly frank. But and Chris, I'm going to throw to you because the American system's even more different. Often the actual coaches have never even really played. If you look, I don't even know what Bill Belichick's, Greg Popovich, and for those who know, Bill Belichick coached the New England Patriots to 5 or 6 Super Bowls. Greg Popovich coached the San Antonio Spurs to 5. And now I think Greg played, but he was a Division I coach at Santa Clara or something like that. But there's a dramatic difference, isn't there, in sport? There's a vehicle to promote through leadership rather than just the technical side of the game. And it's particularly evident in America.
Yeah, I think part of that is that the athletes here are making so much money that it doesn't make sense to get into coaching. For all the brain damage. But I think the other side of it to what Jez is saying is, how would you know if your managers are performing well or not? What are your KPIs that you look at? Is it just the outcome that they're getting from the team, and how would you determine their leadership capacity?
Yeah.
But I think that's what we see time and again. Pete Carroll's an example. He played, I think he was a Division II cornerback, and he's gone on to win Super Bowls. And I think if you looked at a coach now, he'd be the one guy people would say, if I had to pick somebody to go play for, I'd want to play in his culture. But how do they? I think this kind of gets to what Carly kicked us off with, is that we're not investing in that emerging leader like we do at the top of the house. And so that's probably, especially under pressure, I'm seeing that with my clients, that under pressure, they revert back to those old sales skills. So they dive in player coach style, and then leave the standards behind for the rest of the team. And it creates more chaos.
But I think that's a really good point because, and I wanted to pick up on that player coach syndrome so everyone's really clear on it, Carly, that you mentioned. If you're the best marketer or you're the best IT person, that's why you're getting promoted. So if you're the best at that, what are you typically going to fall back on? You're going to do the work, aren't you? Because you think you're better than anyone else. So just pick up on that player coach syndrome, because we see that so often, don't we? Really, in the corporate world.
Yeah, and it comes back to trust. So, there's situational leadership models and the trust model that we talk about a lot, and that, Jez and I work through in workshops, is that just because you know how to do it and just because you're really good at it, how are you empowering the people below you? How are you teaching them? And are you trusting them enough to delegate it down and let them have a go? Because we're always scared that it's not going to be done properly, or they're not going to do it right, or, some level of failure. But, we've got to start seeing that letting them do it and letting them learn their own way is actually empowering them to do it better and allowing us to trust them, allowing them to learn the skills to do it more. And everyone really struggles with that concept, don't they, Jez? Like we see it so often. It's like people take it back and say, no, I know how to do it, so I want to do it. And I think that's the metaphor.
But by definition, I think is just what is the player coach syndrome. When an athlete finishes playing the game and they retire and they become a coach and they sit in the coach's box, they can't go out and play.
Yeah.
So they have to sit there and they have to watch it all unfold. So their ability to coach is really their ability to communicate their game plan, the leadership, the fitness during the week. That the difference between the corporate sector and professional sport is that someone gets promoted to a senior management position, but they still can go back in and play. They go, as soon as it gets difficult, they go in and interfere. They can't, as you say, Carly, they're not giving their team the trust and they're not giving their team the skill set, because what they're doing is as soon as it's hard, in they go and they start playing again. So we continually come up against it. And we've got a client, and I often reflect on this. Her board gave her $10,000 for her professional development. Yeah. And we were working with the executive group, and she came to us and said, my board has given me $10,000 for my professional development. What do you think I should do? And we had a bit of a chat about it. And she said, no, I'm actually not going to do that. I'm actually going to invest in the next group of leaders below me, the 40 leaders below me.
Yeah.
And it has just made such a difference to that company. Like 100% changed the company. And it was the selfless leadership of their CEO saying, no, hang on, the best thing I can do as a CEO for my leadership and the leadership of the company is to invest really heavily in the group below us. And I promise you, it's changed the way that the people in the company think and lead. And I just think sometimes leaders, we think, oh, we've got to invest in the executive team or even the GM. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but if you want genuine results to fix some of the problems that Carly's talking about, invest in the leadership of the people that lead your people.
And I also think
my question to you, Ruzi, is how do we make leaders aware of where they need to put the investment or where they need to target the development? How do we help them understand what that is?
I think the starting point is what is leadership. I mean, that probably to me is probably the thing that hits me is still there's this confusion around what it is. It's a difference between, as we've said, doing. Is leadership doing? No, often leadership is not doing. That's probably the hardest thing that people find. How do I stop doing? And Jez, you made a really good point, that distinction between player coach. How frustrating do you reckon it is for someone like myself? Michael Voss and Nathan Buckley, Damien, it doesn't matter who it is, to sit in the coach's box knowing that you can't actually. So it's almost like for the corporate world, put yourself in that position. What does that look like for you? If you cannot do the job, then you can define leadership better. But if you've continually put yourself in that position, then you have no idea what leadership is. And I think it actually starts with the very notion of leadership. And again, and Chris, I'll defer to you, it's this ability to understand the concepts. And I think, we do this unbelievably well within our workshops, but invest in your people, give them some tools, because if you don't, the mechanics of a business is you just become really good at technically doing something, which is fine if you're asked to continue to technically do it. But at the point where you've asked to stop doing, it becomes incredibly difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think Ruzi, sorry, Chris, I know Ruzi was going to throw to you, but I think the thing that we need to do as leaders of our company, this is answering your question, Carly, is split what is a technical leadership capacity. So what is technical, your capacity to do your job on a day-to-day basis, versus what is the leadership, communication, self-awareness, ability to have difficult and positive conversations.
Relationships.
Yeah, build relationships. They're all the leadership pieces. But
100%.
if we focus on, can you develop a sales strategy? Can you build a business plan? Do you know the technical components of our product? If we only focus on those, well, then we're in trouble. And so I think that the question you asked, Ruzi, is fantastic. But as leaders, do we break down?
Yeah. Do we know what
is a leader?
100%. I absolutely agree.
And what does it look like, right? And it looks like in those moments, and I think for leaders, this comes up a lot in the workshops, is that moment that they see something that needs to be done. And the thought crosses there, well, it's just going to be easier if I do it. It'll get done the way that I want it done.
Yeah.
And in those are those moments. The fewer moments that a leader takes those to go do the work, and rather than empowering their people, when they empower, now they're really giving their leaders a chance to step up, because it's never going to be a situation where the company is going to fold directly because of a mistake they might make. But those mistakes are where the growth comes from, and to let them do that and be able to walk them through it on the other side. And so I think that's where leaders really take on their true role as a leader, is in those moments, is how they mentor their middle managers through those times, come up with a plan. And
the other thing is, we talk about all the time, Chris, is the review. And you and I talk about it a lot. If you don't review the project or review whatever the sales process or then you're never going to give advice on how that person can do it better. So that's a missing piece as well. If we don't review on a regular basis, then we're probably less likely to empower, because I don't have time to review what you're doing, Chris. I'll just do it myself.
Right. And it gets back to what we've all been talking about, right? They're promoted to leadership roles because they were doers.
Yeah.
And the role has to change. If you're still a doer in a leadership capacity, you're probably not the leader that you want to be. And
and probably the answer to that question is, how much time do you spend thinking about how you're leading? Like if you ask, we ask that question in workshops, and invariably, Carly, you just get this blank look, don't you? Like, what do you mean? I've got to set aside time to actually think about how I'm leading and plan my lead. It's fascinating.
Yeah, but it's super important, really important.
And on that, Murph, I'm not going to wrap it up now, but it's funny because, and I'm not going to mention to embarrass him, but you and I know who it is, Murph. We've got one of the CEOs of one of the biggest companies in Australia, and how quickly he gets back to us. He emails us back, because he's so organised and he's such a good leader that he sees that as an important part of his role. 95% of the others want to make an excuse about, it's too busy, That excuse can't wash for me anymore because of that particular person that we deal with on a regular basis, isn't it? And that's exactly what you're talking about. He's defined leadership really well. My role is to get back to Gerard Murphy from Performance by Design, because they run our leadership program. So if I'm not getting back to them, then that's bad role modeling. Right? But again, it gets back to that. What's the definition of leadership? How much time do I have to give to that part of the role? And I reckon that's a really good starting point that people have to define.
But I mean, the other side of that means, mate, is that leader is trusting his leaders to run the business. So he's got the time.
Yeah.
If he's diving in all the time to try and save something, then he hasn't got the time to deal with the other issues that arise. So it's a massive multiplier of productivity if you get it right. But
100%.
All we can do is keep trying to help.
Yeah, no, good. Well done. Excellent. Culture Cows Live. Well done, Carly, coming up with that. Well done for your hosting duties. I'll give you a 9.5 out of 10. Excellent work.
Can you review me after this, Ruzi?
I was going to say, I'm surprised she's not closing it all off, Ruzi.
No, just small steps, Murph. We'll go to the top and then I'll tail it off at the end. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Carly. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Jez. We'll see everyone next week on the Culture Cows Live. Thanks a lot.